Good afternoon, world. Welcome to Kisumu City. Kisumu CBD actually is about 20 minutes from Karateng, which is where my home is in Western Kenya. And those of you who are accustomed to our videos, you know most of our videos we shoot in Karateng and in different parts of Kenya. So this afternoon we are taking a boat ride on Lake Lolwe, which is the largest freshwater lake in Africa. This is where I was raised. I've spent most of my years here, and it warms my heart to come back over and over again to spend time here. I'm sure folks who've been to Kisumu, this is one spot you do not miss. So if you find yourself in town, come down to Donga. There's plenty of things to do. One of them is just taking a leisurely boat ride to enjoy the cool breeze from the lake, just taking in the smells, the sounds, droplets of cool water hitting our skins on the hot sun. Friends, this is what we call paradise. In my mother tongue, we say "my polo," meaning this is it. This is paradise. So one of the things that I enjoy when I'm home. So in today's video, I want to share with you some of the things that I still find surprising, or things that surprise me, even though I see them all the time in the world of construction and in the world of returnees who are preparing to put together stuff at home. But before we do that, I want to share with you a few other things related to what we do in our channel. If you're watching us for the first time, welcome to our channel. We talk about all things that are important to people who are returning to Africa, especially people who are returning to Kenya. We talk about children, we talk about adults, we talk about construction, we talk about real estate and all that. And so if you're in need of consultation services, reach us out on the number that I post. As I say, I am not an expert on many of these things, but I've become really good at finding experts. So the primary thing I do for folks, I connect folks with experts who have worked with the diaspora. And I work almost exclusively with experts who have worked with the diaspora clients. And then I help supervise stuff whenever I'm home. And as you know, I spend as much time as possible at home. And hopefully, in the next few years, I'll be able to fully transition to this amazing place. So join me. Let's enjoy the breeze. Let's enjoy the lake as we discuss some of the surprises that I run into, things that are not necessarily new, but every single time I run into them, I'm like, I can't believe this is still happening. So join me and let's talk. So the first thing that excuse me, the first thing that always surprises me is when our clients, especially construction clients, meet the reality that can be about the difference between the estimates they're given and the reality on the shop. And I'll give you an example. Today, I was going to buy metal for some work that I'm doing for a client. And this is a quote that was done last night. And then you get to the shop and the prices for the exact same steelworks have shot up by nearly 30%. So right off the bat, you realize that whatever lease that we give the client, there's going to be a little bit of a variation. So what I tell folks is that when you get a quote, remember at any rate, the quote is always an estimate and you get the best estimate possible given the expertise of the person giving it. If you get a good fundi, the variation should be relatively small. But if you have a case where, and I've seen this, where the change between the quote and the reality is more than 50%, then we have a problem. We have a problem with whoever wrote the quote. So generally, remember, whatever it is that you're given by any expert, these are just estimates. And each expert gives you their best estimate. So expect there to be some variation. And this is the reason I tell clients, always make sure that you have a budget for miscellaneous expenses, because things are always going to change. No matter how good your experts are, costs are going to change. So don't lose it when you get a quote and then things change at some point, especially on the material side. Now, the second thing that often surprises me is when folks expect to get luxury on a budget of 5 million shillings and less. I mean, I only have maybe 5, 6 years experience in the construction field, but I know in today's Kenya, 5 million is not enough to get you luxury. Yes, you will build a house that you can live in, it'll be okay. But if you're looking for high end luxury stuff, 5 million is not going to cut it. In part because the finishes that a luxury can be quite expensive. In fact, tiling alone, depending on the size of the house, would even go easily for 3 million, just tiling alone. So please don't expect luxury on a 5 million budget. You'll get a house for sure, but it probably won't be top of the range. The third thing that often surprises me is when people still give Foodies money to go buy materials. I mean, you can do that, but it's not always a good idea. Like in my case, I work with a ton of folks. And in that whole group, there's only 2 Foodies that I can trust to send to go buy materials. It's almost always a bad idea, unless you have no choice. And then other thing that also surprises me is when clients walk in with 1 kilogram of trust. That's a lot. I always say, no matter what, under whichever circumstance, you have to maintain some level of skepticism. Even when you're working with me, I am human, mistakes happen. There has to be some level of skepticism because you just never know. When you overtrust, that is when things go wrong. And then I'm often surprised when people accept quotes for metal works and they're given, instead of Foodies writing the specific metal that they're going to use, they list the quote in terms of weight. That is one way of really making more money out of it, just so you know. And then people still pay for BQs. BQs can be done by your Fundi. Please don't pay for it. It's probably not worth your money. And then I'm often surprised when people almost always go for the lowest bidder. I have about 5 roofing Fundis. I often give them work. Sometimes they have to bid in between. But the lowest bidder isn't always your best bet. So don't always go by the lowest bidder if you're expecting to get something quality. It doesn't work like that. And then the other thing that, again, surprises me all the time is when clients have a hard time accepting responsibility when something goes wrong, especially on their part. Typically, we do what we call labor contracts, where we negotiate the labor, but the materials are bought by clients. Now, if a client goes on, like I'm dealing with a case right now that a client went and bought bathroom finishes and tiles that are really, really low quality. And so when you buy low quality stuff, it might reflect in the final product. And when things go wrong, clients almost always blame the Fundis, when in fact, the problem started with them buying really cheap materials. So I hope as a client, if you participate in the process, you should be willing to accept at least some of the responsibility when something goes wrong. The only place where you can absolve yourself is when the contractor does everything, buys materials, organizes the Fundis, supervises, then yes, in that case, you are not responsible. But if you buy materials, be willing to accept responsibilities. And then I'm often surprised when clients work with Fundis who will take any work. And by any work, I mean sometimes a client is really asking you to do something that is potentially dangerous. A good Fundi should be able to say that I hear you, but here's why I'm not able to deliver that. Especially when a client is asking you to cut costs in ways that compromises the quality of your work. If you got a Fundi who is willing to do that, then we have a problem. You should have a Fundi who is able to say that what you're asking me is dangerous and here's why. And they are willing to walk away. That tells you about the quality of a Fundi. Your Fundi should not be able to compromise quality in terms of something that potentially is dangerous. And then, of course, I'm often surprised when clients still work with Foodies who are going to run over you. A lot of Foodies in Kenya will insist on doing whatever they want to do. And so clients find themselves in this space where they feel like they need the Foodies' permission to have the things that they need done. No, remember, this is your project. This is the house that you're going to live in. As long as what you're asking for does not compromise safety, what you want is what needs to be done. Whether it's sizes, and this is where I always have some fights with Fundis, where you're asking for a bigger size in terms of doors and things like that, and then they keep telling you standard. The home is yours. They do what you want. The only time where there can be compromise is when there's a safety issue going on. But issues of preference, the client rules. It's your project, you get it done your way. And then I'm often surprised when clients have sites that are not secured. You're building a very expensive project and there's no proper fence, there's nobody living on site. It's only a matter of time and somebody's going to break in and things are going to go wrong. So never leave a construction site unsecured. And then, of course, when I'm often surprised when clients give Foodies materials without any checks. They give you a list of plumbing materials, electrical materials, welding materials. You just purchase them in bulk, give it to them. Like, for example, they might need like a couple of soldering items. If they need 15, they'll write 30. So don't just give them things without checking, hey, do you really need that number that is being purchased? And then again, I'm often surprised when people just leave everything in the hands of relatives without checks and balances. I hope you've learned something, and I will see you in the next.